Well, welcome everyone. My name is Tammy Ty. I'm with Root Cause that does support for the Campaign for Black Male Achievement. Thank you to everyone who's on the line right now. We're going to give folks another minute or so because we did have about 100 or so folks sign up for this webinar. So thank you all for being here on time, and we'll get started in just a few minutes. Thanks everyone again for your patience. We're just letting folks continue to sign in. We're going to get going in another minute or so. Thank you again for your patience. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for your patience. We were just waiting for a few other folks to join us. Again, my name is Tammy Ty. I am with Root Cause that supports the Campaign for Black Male Achievement. Thank you all for coming on to this important webinar that we do monthly in support of the Campaign for Black Male Achievement. Just a reminder, particularly if you've not been with us before, if you've got questions, you can just chat them in. That's the way that we'll take your questions for today. But now it is my honor to introduce Sheba Rogers, who's the Promise of Place Program Manager with the campaign out of Detroit, who will be moderating this webinar. So, Sheba, it is yours. And Sheba, you may need to unmute yourself. I think you're unmuted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We can, Sheba. There you go. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Tammy, for the introduction, and greetings and good afternoon to everyone who's joining us this afternoon for this very special webinar. We're all very excited coming off of the Promise of Place convening in Louisville, so we look forward to just jumping right into some of the reflections from the Promise of Place convening that took place. But first, we want to provide just an overview and some snapshots of just a very big undertaking our team is working on. It's the second edition of our Promise of Place report. We'll be releasing the report in early 2018, so we're very excited to share just a few highlights today of the report and what you can expect in the report. We're very excited. The team has been working very hard on the second edition, so we'll have a few updates on the 2018 report before we hear from our convening partners who will share some of their reflections. But to start, if there's any of our members joining us for the first time, I'd like to just provide a very brief overview of the Campaign for Black Male Achievement, established in 2008 as an initiative of the Open Society Foundations. CBMA, the Campaign for Black Male Achievement, is a national membership network that seeks to ensure the growth, sustainability, and impact of leaders and organizations committed to improving the life outcomes for Black men and boys across the nation. In 2015, CBMA spun off from the Open Societies Foundation as an independent entity, which we're now supporting a growing network of more than 4,700 individuals representing over 2,500 organizations across the United States. We provide resources and services for capacity building, networking, as well as strategic communication. So that's just a brief overview. As you can see here on the slide, where we have our members represented across the nation, and we're continuing to grow. So if you are not already a member, please do go on our website and log just a brief registration. You can log in and register and become a member of our wonderful network. We do have a variety of partners that we work with, as well as funders that we just, of course, have to acknowledge, because without our partners and our funders, we wouldn't be able to do the work that we do. And so CBMA is very proud to work with and learn from our partners across the nation. On our website, you can check out the work of many of our members that are featured on the website there as well. CBMA enjoys the opportunity to acknowledge our funders who have been instrumental in our startup and continue to support our work as we deepen and expand our efforts nationally and across local communities. Our funding partners include the Open Societies Foundation, J.P. Morgan Chase, the Skillman Foundation, Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, the Keenan Charitable Trust, Ford Foundation, Capers Center for Social Impact, Knight Foundation, Casey Family Programs, the Heinz Endowments, the California Endowment, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Kresge Foundation, Carnegie Corporation of New York, the Chicago Community Trust, as well as the American Express Foundation. Here you can find some of our partners that we've been working very closely with, Be Me, My Brothers Keepers Cities United, National League of Cities, Echo and Green, Executive Alliance, NYC Young Men's Initiative, and of course CBMA's Rumble Young Men Rumble. So we just like to acknowledge our partners in our work during these spaces, because it's just very critical to the work that we do. You'll see here a few of our resources and some of our reports that are featured on our website. Feel free to go on our website. You can access all of these reports. The Promise of Place, Cities Advancing Black Male Achievement, released in December of 2015. And, of course, our second edition of that will be coming out early 2018. Building a Beloved Community, Strengthening Thank you, Tammy. Building a Beloved Community, Strengthening the Field of Black Male Achievement. Quantifying Hope, Philanthropic Support for Black Men and Boys. That also was released in 2015. We also have a second edition also coming out soon. So please continue to be on the lookout on our website for an updated report of our Quantifying Hope. And where do we go from here? Philanthropic support for Black men and boys. So we have a lot of resources on our website, not just reports, but other resources and tools and services that you can access to support your work as well. So to jump straight into today's webinar, we really wanted it to be a little bit more conversational with our convening partners. We really just wanted to hear from them, have a dialogue, but also give you a sneak peek into what's coming with our 2018 report. First, I'll start with our 2015 report, Promise of Place. So that was the first edition of our report. And in that report, that undergirds it is we're trying to paint the picture across the nation, what is happening in our cities, what is happening across the nation to engage and support and advance Black male achievement and Black men and boys across our cities. And so what does it mean to be a promising city for Black male achievement? And CBMA's bold goal is to build beloved communities across America where Black men and boys are healthy, thriving, and enabled to achieve their fullest potential. And so the Promise of Place report is a snapshot of that work that's happening across the nation. So we're very excited to just dive deep into what the report is all about. First, we know that there are a number of challenges, both at the city level, at the national level, that our communities are facing. Of course, changes in federal support for community programs, services, and initiatives. That federal support has decreased. The current administration has not made a commitment to Black men and boys, and the My Brother's Keeper initiative adopted under the Obama administration has been eliminated under this current administration. So we know that that's a huge challenge. We know that our schools and school districts face continued challenges with funding, resources, qualified teachers, curriculum, and other challenges happening in schools that are impacting our Black males. And of course, we know that what happens in families and communities also impacts Black male achievement. And so the work that the report seeks to capture are sort of what our cities and communities doing to advance work for our Black men and boys. But of course, we lift up the bright path within the work. I mean, that is what we do this work for. The report is really a snapshot of the bright spots that are happening and have been happening since 2015. So we see increased community commitments to Black men and Black male achievement. We see that the My Brother's Keeper Alliance has forged additional partnerships and have integrated under the Obama Foundation, which is exciting. 250 cities, counties, and tribal nations have accepted the My Brother's Keeper Challenge, and 50 of those 250 cities are featured in the Promise of Place BMA City Index. And so we'll jump into what the BMA City Index is all about as well. So as we think about the 2015 report and sort of the context in which the report was released, it was really a first of its kind report that provided a snapshot of what was going on in cities to support Black men and boys. So it was really the first that we were able to see sort of a detailed engagement and list of activities and supports and initiatives happening across the nation. And in the 2015, we did unveil the BMA City Index, and we'll jump into what the index was all about. The 50 cities that were featured in the report will also be featured in the 2018 report. Those include 12 large cities, 18 mid-sized, and 20 small cities. So these cities made up a variety of demographic characteristics, and that's what we really wanted to see, is really a variety of cities doing the work to support Black men and boys. And essentially the report answers what are these cities doing for Black men and boys. The 50 cities measured in the 2015 City Index spanned 29 states and included 5.5 million Black men and boys, or represented 5.5 million Black men and boys. The index used 5 key indicators to track engagement and movement across the field, across the nation. And across those indicators, the 5 that you see here on the screen, and I'll go through them, the maximum score was 100 points. And each of the 5 indicators add up to the 100 points. So the first one was demographic mix. We wanted to look at the presence of Black men and boys as a percentage of the total male population in the city. Cities were able to score up to 10 points for that category. City-led commitment to Black men and boys, cities were able to score up to 30 points for this category. And what we saw in this category was demonstrated city-level awareness and commitment to the work on behalf of Black men and boys at the city level. CBMA membership, cities were able to score up to 20 points for this category, and that included the number of CBMA individual members and the number of CBMA organizational members that have registered with our network. And it's free, and you can go onto our website and register to become a member. We also looked at national initiatives supporting Black men and boys. Cities were able to score up to 20 points for this category. And in this category, we looked at local presence of select nationally led programs, initiatives, and activities, as well as other assets supporting Black men and boys and or issues impacting Black men and boys. So we have a number of initiatives that fit within the number 4 national initiative category. And of course, we had to look at targeted funding supporting Black men and boys. Cities were able to score up to 20 points for that, and that included the level of targeted philanthropic investment and efforts focused on Black men and boys. We know that on the ground, cities and communities want to do this work, but often the challenge is that they may not have the funding. So we wanted to include the funding and efforts to engage philanthropic communities in this work as part of our 5 indicators here. We also like to just stress that the 5 indicators that we're looking at, it doesn't measure outcomes, it doesn't measure that level of engagement. We want to first just take a first step, look at what are the engagements, what are the activities happening. And as we continue to move forward with other work and reports, we hope to be able to look at sort of some of those outcomes across cities. But this report truly just looks at the engagement and what's happening on the ground. So we wanted to just elevate that. This is not to assess outcomes, achievement levels, or anything of that nature. We want to know what our cities doing to advance Black men and boys in their cities. So as we move through very quickly, you'll see here the top 10 scoring cities from 2015. Some of these cities have remained in the top within the 2018 report, and then there are a few additional cities who have moved up into the top. And you'll see that in the 2018 report. So we're really excited to just track the movement that's been happening. We did that. We used the same 5 key indicators that we just discussed. We used those 5 key indicators in addition to the same 50 cities that we looked at in 2015. So essentially we're doing a tracking of those engagements as well as new engagements, new initiatives as well. So that we see here the top 10 cities are listed, but you can check out our website to see what these cities scored in terms of the 100 points and where they fare by going onto our website to check out the scores there. So we're very excited the work that these cities are doing. So staying engaged beyond the report, we elevated the 3 core values. The report in 2015 that was released highlighted the work happening across cities, but what do we have to do to continue to move forward to advance the work? We do that through the three core values: collective work and responsibility, respect and recognition, as well as emphasizing bold goals and outcomes within our work. So as we move into the 2018 report, which will come out in early 2018, so please be on the lookout for announcements. We'll continue to look at 50 cities across 29 states within that report. And highlights of the report, what you'll find out in the report, how cities are remaining engaged, how are cities moving the needle. We'll look at increased number of initiatives in the BMA City Index, additional data collection beyond the BMA City Index, deeper dive profiles of city engagement work, so new cities will be featured who were not featured in the 50 City Index, and then we present a framework for what is a promising BMA city. So we're really excited for what's to come in that. We will feature a section on building blocks, the BMA cities that are utilizing field building blocks to advance Black male achievement in their city. So we spotlight 5 cities who completed a survey within their cities to communicate how their city are working through challenges as well as the successes in those communities surrounding the 8 building blocks. And then we also feature a new section, which is Cities on the Horizon. Cities on the horizon are those cities that have not been included in the BMA City Index, but they are innovatively addressing Black male achievement, and those will include 6 featured cities. So we want you to stay tuned to our future webinars this year, future Promise of Place webinars, where we'll be kind of unveiling more about who are these cities and a little bit more about what you can expect from the report. We present an in-depth roadmap to what it means to become a promising city for Black male achievement. Through our detailed profiles of the cities, we also offer key action steps surrounding the 5 key indicators, so action steps that will support cities in increasing their city-led administrative commitment, increasing their national initiative supporting Black men and boys, their targeted funding, their CBMA membership, as well as their demographics. And we also offer a number of resources and available data within the 2018 report as well. So how did we collect the information that will be featured in the 2018 report? We did survey CBMA stakeholders and members to develop a comprehensive assessment of their city's leadership, movement, and commitment on behalf of Black men and boys, and we also assessed how they were doing on a scale from 1 to 10 within each of the 10 buildings. Within each of the 8 building blocks. And the 8 building blocks are listed here. In that survey, we looked at city administration commitment to Black men and boys, how the cities are reimagining Black men and boys through their initiatives, Black men and boys stakeholder community, what does their actionable Black men and boy agenda look like in their cities, targeted funding, what is their effective practice base, coordinated capacity building infrastructure, as well as coordination and continuum of BMA activities. So we go deeper in the building blocks profiles on these 8 building blocks featuring 5 cities. So we're very excited about the new sections that will be featured, including the cities on the horizon. Next slide. Okay, so what we learned about our cities on the horizon since they were not included in the BMA City Index. These cities have a deepening commitment to improving the life outcomes of Black men and boys, and also have a demonstrated great potential for intense engagement and committed action, which is really exciting. We're learning a lot from cities across the nation, and we're excited to feature the 6 cities on the horizon and the work that they're doing. As we move ahead into another portion of the webinar today, which is the Promise of Place convening, we wanted to start with the Promise of Place report, because the Promise of Place convening essentially built upon the report. It was a space where we were able to kind of go a little deeper into the 5 key indicators with city leaders across the nation. The convening was held October 11th through the 13th at the historic Muhammad Ali Center, and we engaged about 50 community leaders across the nation from select CBMA partner cities, which represented about 8 to 10 cities including cities such as Detroit, Baltimore, Oakland, Omaha, and a number of other cities that we're seeing movement in their work around Black men and boys. The goals of the convening were bring together CBMA members from 5 POP cities, including additional cities, to begin developing a community of practice. We also wanted to deeply explore the Promise of Place report, which we did in detail, and we just really got a lot done and just a lot of rich conversations and discussions around what was going on in cities. We provided a space to impart and clarify CBMA's role, partnerships, and initiatives. We provided an opportunity to bring participants and thought leaders together to share current research and best practices, and our convening partners were really the ones who were able to bring in that expertise because they are the leaders in their cities that are doing the work. And we also shared a number of available resources. So the convening was a success, but I think you might want to hear that from our convening partners who were in attendance, so we want to just jump straight into hearing from them. And just kind of getting a sense of what they learned, what they took away, and just any insights that they can impart with us today. Can you go to the next slide? Our first question, can we just have maybe, actually all of you, if you could briefly answer this one because I think it's an important one. Can you describe the biggest takeaway from the Promise of Place convening and how that takeaway will help advance the work in your community?
My name is,
Can you introduce yourself first, please, before
sure.
You speak?
My name
Actually,
is
if we
Dr.
go back,
Jim
I'd like to introduce. Actually, if we go back, I'd like to introduce who we'll be hearing from today. We have Dr. Jim Bostic out of Yonkers, New York. Dr. Bostic is the Executive Director of the Nepperhan Community Center. We also have Jeff Roman. He's with the Derute Consulting Cooperative out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. David Miller, founder, Dare to Be King Project out of Baltimore. Kimberly Newberry Johnson, founder and CEO of Developing Kids.
The conference has been unmuted.
And Shelley Henderson, the lead facilitator of the Keeper-Heartland out of Omaha. So thank you to all of our wonderful convening partners and our CBMA partners for joining us to share your reflections from the convening. So I'll just pass it back to whomever was going to go first.
This is Dr. Bostic from Yonkers, New York, Jim Bostic. And my biggest takeaway from the convening was actually Sean Dove, the CEO of CBMA, the initial address when he spoke about those of us in the field being willing to take risks, the urgency of our work, and the momentum to get it done. He also spoke of raising our awareness and developing strategic partnerships. So from a personal perspective, his comments encouraged me to return back here to New York, and we have convened a Lower Hudson Valley, My Brother's Keeper Alliance. And so we met at our quarterly meeting right after the convening, and we immediately developed a critical partnership with our alliance and the Westchester Children's Association, who are the foremost experts in data collection and child advocacy related to this work, highlighting the importance of having data to drive the work that we're doing. We also galvanized our alliance members around very specific goals and objectives over the next year, including hosting a Boys and Young Men of Color conference next September, creating a media team to tell the story of the work that we're doing, and also looking at how we can leverage funding and developing our funding priorities, as well as beginning the process of strategic planning. And then finally, my other takeaway was actually being at the Muhammad Ali Center and having an opportunity to see the work of Muhammad Ali and beyond his boxing career, and how it encouraged me that we just have so much more work to do, working with moving the needle for our young boys and men of color.
Thank you, Dr. Bostic.
You're welcome.
Was there anyone else wanted to share one of their takeaways?
Sending this to you. You're right.
Is that okay? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So I'm Shelley from Henderson. I'm from the city of Omaha in Nebraska. While this is not my first time engaging with some of the individuals from CBMA, it was my first opportunity being with this group as a unit, and it was just interesting having all of the individuals and personalities from the CBMA staff to the national network all in the same room. And so some of the things that I wanted to highlight are these let me preface it by saying when we begin to come together again in Omaha, these are the things that I hope to replicate from my experience with the Promise of Place convening. So I feel like we started off acknowledging, as Dr. Bostic said, that the need for love and humanity. And we got that from Sean, and it really resonated throughout the conversations, the commitment to healing and self-care, but also this commitment to excellence in the midst of social toxicity. So I really appreciated Sean Genwright's conversation about social toxicity. And again, while we know what we're up against, we've probably always known what we've been up against, that commitment to love and healing and excellence in the midst of it was important to me. The other thing that I hope to replicate in Omaha from my experience with the convening is just acknowledging that some of the deficit ideology about our boys, who they are and who they're not, what they have and what they do not, we didn't focus on that. And so often it's easy to fall into that trap and fall into the despair about how hard change is when we know that the ideology about who our boys are really is based on a lie about their inferiority. So I was really pleased that we didn't live in that deficit space, but that we were committed to celebrating the humanity and the brilliance of our boys. And so I hope to bring that back to Omaha. The last thing that I'd like to say is that the commitment to bonding and bridging and building a network of critical friends is something that I like to do, and I appreciate having the opportunity to do it. And so it's one thing to know each other, to meet each other, to know each other, to be committed to take action after you've gone your separate ways, but to really develop that network of people that you can call upon. There are things happening in other cities that I learned about for the first time. People are boldly going after change for our boys, and I want to be able to bring that back. But the last thing that I'll say is I don't think that I spent as much time ever in Omaha with my co-colleague who came to Kentucky with me, Douglas County Commissioner Chris Rogers. So even thinking about how to give each other our undivided attention because our boys are worth it. So much more I could say, but I wanted to center my thoughts around those.
Excellent. Thank you, Shelley, for your thoughts and reflections.
Good afternoon.
The conference has been muted.
I thought I heard someone. Was that you, Kim? Okay. Who would like to go next? David, Jeff, Kim? Hello?
A ton of background noise.
Oh, Tammy, I didn't hear you.
So I was saying if our speakers would just let us know
put in the chat box that you're ready to speak, and we can unmute your line. Otherwise, we'll have to unmute everyone, and we get a lot of background noise, or just maybe, all right, so Kim looks like she's ready, so we'll unmute your line.
Thank you, Kim. Are you there? Tammy, do we have her unmuted?
Yes, I'm not sure. Jeff, your line is open if you'd like to go ahead and offer some remarks.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
All right. So this is Jeff Roman in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and thank you all for continuing to let us lift up the work that's happening in our communities. To answer the question, I think the biggest takeaway, I know the biggest takeaway that I got from the Promise in Place convening was the understanding and the realization that Milwaukee isn't alone. And while there are a number of cities who have their various different niches and different things that they do, there is a community of cities and school districts, particularly fighting the fight to improve outcomes and drive positive change for Black men and boys across America, which was evident at the convening. So we're all facing similar challenges and issues, rooting from the same things that we talked about, and I think that's the long-standing impact of structural racism and white supremacy, which we had a very continued conversation on at the convening. And then lastly, I think much can be learned from examples across our cities regarding how to make better impact. And so there were key examples on how cities are really focused on things like leadership and infrastructure and how to be able to put capacity in place to move outcomes. The conversation about urgency and political will was real for me because without leadership, with the sense of urgency and the political will to move things, not much change is going to happen. And there were real key examples of cities whose mayors and executive leaders in particular have stood up to the plate and have funneled their resources and championed the resources in their communities to really direct to the Black male achievement space, which I think is to the last point that I think is really important is the way that cities are figuring out how to creatively invest and resource this work. And the ingenuity and the creativity that city leaders at the municipal level, at the school district levels, but also at the community and grassroots levels, how they're being creative and identifying resources that exist and maximizing those resources. It was very evident that a lot of resources in a lot of communities already exist. There's not a lot of new money coming into a lot of communities, and so just the creativity of the leaders in the various places that's doing things to be able to redirect resources where it matters is, I think, was one of the biggest things, and there were definitely a lot of examples when I took that personally to bring back here in Milwaukee as I continue to be a champion here for Black male achievement.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeff, for your reflections on the convening. We'll see if Kim is ready now. I know that your line was muted, Kim. If you're ready now, we'll have you share now if you're ready.
Yes, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, thanks, Kim.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. There were so many things that I took back from the convening. And I'll just state a couple of them. The city leaders fishbowl session and methods to develop a public-funded revenue stream, a bottle tax versus a soda tax. That is something that we have been discussing here in Detroit over quite a few years, and how to do that. We're the only major city that does not have a public funding stream for youth development. And so that could provide revenue to support these programs for our Black boys. Also to develop strategic partnerships. I really value the session with the philanthropic leaders that were on the panel discussion, the tips and methods that they gave on how to support the work. They said, maybe we don't support the work that you're doing, but we can help to connect you to someone else who does. So really leveraging those relationships to get the dollars that we need on the ground to support the programs and activities that are occurring. And then the third one was the encouragement of health and healing strategies, not just for the boys that we're working with, but as the people who are working with those boys. Too many of us are dying young for health and nutrition reasons. So Dr. Phillips gave us some very valuable strategies.
Thank you, Kim, for lifting up some of the sessions, particularly around the engagement with city government leaders through the fishbowl, as well as the panel with philanthropic leaders. Both amazing. Thank you for lifting those up. We'd love to hear from David Miller. He's been engaging with the CBMA family and network for a very long time, and so to have him a part of the convening space was truly an honor. And so to hear your reflections today, David, we look forward to that. David, are you there, or is he unmuted?
Sheba, looks like David may not be on the call yet, so maybe we'll go to another question or we can come back if he joins in.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at the time, I'd love to open it up for questions, actually. We have a couple of more questions, but we'd love to begin taking questions from our audience to allow them to engage with our speakers. And then if we don't have questions, I can continue on with a few more that I have.
That sounds good. So if folks have questions, please go ahead and type them in, and we'll send them off to you, Sheba. So we'll take a 30 seconds or so and see what folks put in.
Okay, sure. Great. Thank you. Let's check. All right. And then just we'll take maybe one quick question, and then we'll jump to the question box and see what's come in.
That sounds good. There's your next question, I think.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. So we did feature a little bit of the information from the 2018 report. Maybe we could just hear from maybe one or two of you. What are you most looking forward to about the Promise of Place report that's going to be released in January 2018?
This is Dr. Bostic again, and I'm really looking forward to reading about the great work that is being done in other cities around the country. As I heard my Jeff, I believe, allude to, that we're not alone in this work. It's good to know that other cities are doing great things, and none of us have a monopoly in this work, in this line of work. And so to be able to see what other communities are doing, be able to, in fact, reach out to personnel in those cities to maybe share ideas and concepts is exciting for us in the New York region because we're still developing as we go along, and we're still growing as we're going along. We like to think we're doing some good things, but I know there's a lot more things that we can do and do it a lot better. So that's one of the key things that we're looking forward to, is just to see the great work that other communities are doing and how we can share and use a lot of that stuff to improve upon the work that we are doing in New York for our young boys and men of color.
Thank you, Dr. Bostic, for sharing that. You will receive a lot of that in the 2018 report through our deep dive profiles. We wanted to elevate just what you said. We wanted to really paint a picture of what is happening in cities and tangible examples of what those cities are doing and how they have been doing it. So we look forward to the release of the report, and some of the work that you mentioned will be uplifted across cities. Do we have another convening partner who wanted to share what you're most looking forward to from the Promise of Place report to be released next year?
Hi, this is Shelley.
Yes, Shelley.
Okay, wonderful. So, I think what I'm most looking for about the report in January is celebrating the city. So greater our area, I feel like we've made significant strides since the first report, and our score was 47. So, we wanted to do better than that, and so I want to be able to celebrate with our community that we have done better than that. There were certain reasons that we can cite and actually look back to as to why our score was what it was. And a lot of it had to do with that there were certain efforts and local stakeholders whose efforts weren't being counted. and just a few other things. There were also some national initiatives that you mentioned earlier that we may have in our city, but that we aren't engaging with them like other cities are. So United Way, for example, and City United are two of those. And so now that we've tooled up, collaborated, and signed on in a different way to some of these opportunities, I want to celebrate with my city the improvements that we've made, but I wanted to continue to be a call to action that Omaha boys and young men deserve 100, if that's what 100 is, if we know what 100 means. So I'm ready to celebrate, and I'm ready to roll my sleeves up.
Excellent, Shelley, commenting about the BMA City Index, because we actually saw a great deal of movement from a number of cities who have moved up in their scores. And so we're excited for the reports released for folks to be able to see that the majority, actually a number of our cities have moved up, and they are increasing their partnerships. They are increasing their engagement. So that's something that we celebrate as well in terms of the major focuses of the report, is being able to elevate how cities have moved up and continue to make strides in their work. So thank you and your city and all of the cities on the call for the work that you continue to do and the passion that you have. You took the 2015 report and you ran with it, and you said, the next report we're going to make sure that we have a higher score, and we just applaud your efforts. So thank you. And so, Tammy, do we have a few questions come in that we can take right now for any of the speakers?
Sure. So there's one question, kind of two combined together. As someone on the call is saying, they're new to this work, know that other cities, like we're hearing here, are doing great work. How do we begin to create specific goals and objectives, action steps to move the needle on the work? And someone also had asked, what are key action steps to move this work forward?
That's a really great question. Did we have one of our convening partners who would like to take that question on sort of a tangible action steps to begin the work and move the needle?
Well, I think two things have to happen immediately, and I think that every community should really take a very specific assessment of what the very specific needs are. We can't go by the national narrative of what they say about boys of color and young men of color. I think each community needs to take a very specific assessment of what the needs be, because in some communities it may be more educational as well, and in other communities it may be more job related. So I think the first step is to take an assessment of what those needs are, and then the next step, I think, is to begin to pull in community partners. I think community partners and community stakeholders that believe in this work and want to be a part of the solution, and begin to gather them together. And from that group, you can then begin to strategically plan how you're going to go forward with the information that you ascertain from your assessment. So that would be the first two steps that I would do, and then from there you can begin to pull together a lot of different strategies that you want to employ.
So this is Jeffery in Milwaukee, and I agree 100% with the good doctor from Yonkers, I believe, and just want to enhance that a little bit by saying there's already people in your community doing the work, and I think it would behoove us to begin to really understand the work of the campaign, so that you can really identify those people already out doing the work. When we started around this past 5 or 6 years ago in Milwaukee, the first thing we did, in addition to an assessment, that was the first thing we did. What are the organizations in our community who said they're doing this work? What are they doing already? What are the assets that we have existing in our community already? But another thing that we did was started to identify and really did a process to understand what the Campaign for Black Male Achievement was and the various focus areas that at that point that it was supporting in terms of financial support and capacity building support. And we started to asset map who in our community was aligned with those, with what I call the BMA tenants, who was aligned with that work in our community that we could begin to convene and bring together. So assessment and identification of stakeholders is critically important. And once you do that, you have all you need in the room to begin to talk about vision and what goals and strategies you want, and utilize and build upon the assets that already exist in your community.
Excellent question and excellent responses there from our partners. Tammy, did we have another question?
It's a little bit specific, but maybe folks can give some general idea. Someone's asking about best options to find funding for a small mentorship program that they run for middle school boys, but maybe folks can talk to, the funding to support this work and where are folks finding that?
So I'll start. This is Jeffery, Milwaukee again. I think we have had, and just recently this year, we've had better support actually engaging folks in the community, grassroots folk, and engaging them and organizing them to support this work versus an intentional kind of strategy to go into our funders, into government, public dollars. If you ask people to support, 9 times out of 10 they'll support. And so I think in terms of getting in the practice of asking people on the ground who aren't affiliated with dollars in philanthropy and government to be able to support and really make the case that in supporting this work, you're supporting directly your younger brother, your younger nephew, your grandson. We found a lot of success recently over the last year, a lot of traction, and people without those connections actually wanting to support because we're asking the question, and we are not relying on per se large funding opportunities from our local philanthropy and government sources, but really going to the people and telling them, hey, make this investment, a small investment, help us get some shoes for this young man, help us, buy a lunch, or, those kind of things. If you ask folk on the ground, grassroots folk, they will support the work. And we have an example of a program here called We Got This. And the individual, Angelique Ellis, who started that program, he put a Facebook post and said, I got 5 young men on Saturday. I need to pay them $20 by the time they leave this garden. And not only was he able to pay those 5 young men $20 each, but the abundance of resources that came from the community because he asked the question on Facebook really showed that we don't have to be as dependent on traditional funding sources like philanthropy and government to support this work. Let's ask the people, organize the people, and when you do that, you're organizing their resources as well.
Yeah. And I think also, in addition to what Jeff just alluded to, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of organizations and agencies. Don't discount the faith-based institutions. I think you have to look in terms of leveraging funding that's already existing because, as you heard mentioned, I believe by Sheba earlier, there's not a lot of new funding out there. But to make this thing work, I think you have to increase a pool of volunteerism. Number one, I think you have to leverage existing funding from other agencies and organizations, and oftentimes the faith-based institutions can be a great source to contribute to or be a part of providing resources for these kinds of things, particularly as it relates to mentorship. So I would look from within because there's not a lot of funding out there that's available, so you have to be very creative in what already exists.
So there's a tag on to this question coming in around, are there efforts to sort of push up against at the federal level the barriers to funding? Someone's asking, is there pressure being put on the current administration to commit resources to black men and boys?
Can I just say this real quick, only because I recently went to a federal conference, and there was a high-level federal official that was there, and he very clearly said to us, you cannot even mention, first of all, my brother's keeper, second of all, that you're attempting to or trying to solicit funding for boys and young men of color, because it will not happen. You have to go about it in a very, very different way. So that is a major challenge with this administration.
Do we have any other insights from our convening partners on the question posed? Thank you, Dr. Bostic, for that insight of the meeting you attended, the federal meeting you attended.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Tammy, did you have another question posed? And then we'll probably wrap up after maybe one more question.
Sure. So it's a bit connected to this funding question, but there's a question here: Are cities, and I guess we'll talk to the folks who we've got here, doing anything to really inoculate themselves against detrimental policy changes that may come under the current administration? So, and I think we just heard about not asking for direct funding for this specific work, but doing it in different ways. But what else are cities doing to really sort of protect themselves from potential harmful policy changes?
This is Kim Johnson again. Can you hear me?
Yes, Kim, you're on. Thank you.
I was going to say that as a follow-up, what we did, those that were from Detroit, we left the convening promising that we would reconnect again soon. Again, talking about, as Sean Dove mentioned, the urgency and having to take risks to make things happen. So we are actually meeting this Friday. And our group consists of long-term community leaders, city leaders, grassroots leaders, just folks on different levels to come together and look at what are those risks and come up with some strategies and pull together some strategic partners so that when those barriers come, we can kind of, succeed over those. I think it all leads back to having a strategy.
Yeah, and then I would add on to that, don't underestimate the power of your voice and the ability that you have to leverage and influence your local politics, your state and your counties and your cities. There are a lot of safeguards that exist at the local level, particularly if you're in a state or a community that is Democratic leaning, that are put in place in anticipation of some of the cuts and things that are going to happen at the federal level in terms of policy and funding. And so don't underestimate the power of your voice and the impact that you have on your local electeds at the state and at the county and the local level, because they need to be an intentional part of your outreach and advocacy strategy as well. And so if you don't have an intentional advocacy and policy advocacy strategy, I would encourage you all to do that. But again, the local level politics and funding that exists, it's important that you don't discount or negate to think about those as you are thinking about your strategy to counter what's happening at the federal level.
Excellent feedback and excellent questions on today. I see that it is 2 o'clock and we are just about at our time. I am deeply enjoying the dialogue today, the questions, the responses, and just the space and opportunity to have a community dialogue. So we just want to take time to thank all of our webinar participants today. Thank you for coming to engage with us and hear a little bit about our 2018 report, as well as to hear reflections from our Promise of Place, our inaugural Promise of Place convening. Thank you for your time. And please do go on our website if you are not already registered to become a member. We also just want to apologize for the brief delay in getting started today, but the conversation has been so rich, and if there are questions that we did not get to, we will pass those questions along to our speakers and get the answers back to you. I also just want to extend a thank you to Rukav and Tammy for their continuous support, to the CBMA team, to Sean Dove, and of course to our esteemed speakers on today for your insights, for your thoughts and reflections. Just as we did in the convening space, we really believe that you are the experts. You are the ones on the ground doing the work day and night with youth, with your city leaders, with your community leaders, with families. And so we thank you for your insights. To Dr. Jim Bostic, we thank you for your time. Kim Newberry Johnson, Shelley Henderson, Jeff Roman, thank you all for your time. Of course, another thank you to our webinar guests, And please feel free to follow us on our social media platforms. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and we stay engaged. We can continue the conversation through our online network, so please feel free to follow some of the work there as well as through Instagram. And we look forward to staying engaged with you. We'll have future webinars that will kind of continue to share a little bit more about the 2018 report. In our upcoming webinars, we do plan to share more about the cities on the horizon and a few more cities that are included in the building blocks profile. So we hope that you will stay tuned because we do see this as a continuous conversation and dialogue as we get ready for the 2018 release of the Promise of Place report. So for today and until our next Promise of Place webinar, we just claim a great afternoon and continue great week ahead for everyone. Thank you for joining. Bye-bye.